Do you work in a remote environment? Or maybe you've got teams in different parts of the company, in different towns or different parts of the world. Today, I'm going to speak with an expert on remote hybrid leadership. And I'm really excited to have Roberta here to share her wisdom, her insight, and provide you some ways to step up your leadership so that you can get promoted and seen in the remote world. Roberta, it is such a pleasure to have you here today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks, Nancy.
So, Roberta, I'm curious, what led you down this journey of getting to understand remote leadership and really study this?
Well, I think before remote work became vogue, like before the pandemic, before any of that, I've actually been privileged throughout my working career to work a kind of hybrid remote. When I'm back to work after having kids, I hadn't thought about going back to work yet. And so when I was asked, I kind of laid out the stipulation. So I said, I want to be able to volunteer in my kids' school. I want to work from home whenever they're sick. I want to work from home during summer holidays, all of that stuff. And I said, but I guarantee that my teams will never be compromised. And they said yes. And so throughout my career, I have been privileged to have that option. And so whenever coming into the pandemic and seeing how much people were struggling, I had already started doing official research on remote work, and then the pandemic hit. And then after that, then I did the second round of leadership. So the first round of research, was on remote work. So competencies for success as remote worker. And then the second research I did was success as a hybrid leader. What are the competencies necessary? So definitely a combination of academia and interviewing. So for the first research, I interviewed 250 remote workers, and the second, 150 people who are leading hybrid teams to get their insight. So yeah, it's a pretty exciting topic, and I think it's a very exciting era of work that we're in right now.
Yeah, and more people are having different options of remote work. Like, I know right at the moment, I'm doing some work with a company in Texas and Los Angeles. And so everything is in that remote space. And the engineering companies in Texas, the company that we're doing the work for is in Los Angeles. And then they've got vendors all over the country.
Yeah.
And some even in the UK. So it's really interesting to see more and more of this remote work and not being in the office, handshake to handshake, face to face with each other.
Yep.
So as you think about the research that you've done, the interviews that you have done, all of the people that you've met in relation to developing these leadership competencies so that you can really stand out and be an exceptional leader in the remote workspace, what are some that really show up and shine for you?
Well, in the area of when you're actually leading, it's not the hard skills that everybody talks about. It really is soft skills that bubble to the surface. So again, these are people that were recommended by other people because they're doing such a good job. And so some of the competencies that bubble to the surface, the first one was the ability to build collaborative teams. Because as you know, with the work you're doing, sometimes you're working face to face, sometimes you're working with somebody around the world, and sometimes you're working with a team that is a combination of both. So being able to build collaborative teams that work together is vital. The next one was demonstrating vulnerability. And that's a really difficult one. And there's a lot of kind of misunderstanding around that. This is not about bleeding everything onto the table about what's going on in your life. This is about a willingness to say, I was wrong. I don't know. I'm willing to change my thinking. I'm willing to unlearn. So it's all of those different kinds of things, which we all really need whenever we're in this really different way of working. Brene Brown is, of course, the expert in all of this, and she has brought so much to the table when we're now working in this kind of era. The next one was creating psychological safety. So when you are in a meeting, for example, some of your team members are calling in, zooming in, whatever it is you're using. Other people are sitting in the room. The ability to create the environment where everybody feels safe to talk, where everybody is okay to say, today's a bad day. I'm here in the meeting, but I need to be sitting back and listening. And allowing people the freedom to do that, allowing people the freedom to voice their opinion, even if it's not popular, even if it's not what the team leader wants to hear or what a popular opinion would be, but to be able to say, this is what I believe, this is what I have seen from my perspective, and this is safe to do it. Coaching and facilitating growth. Leaders are no longer the people who are sitting at the head of an organization kind of spewing out the orders. Leaders need to be able to coach their team members. A large percentage of time that leaders spend is on the people, not necessarily doing other aspects of the job. So knowing how to coach them, knowing how to come alongside, knowing how to bring out the best in them, to recognize when they need coaching, to recognize when you need to step back, to recognize who you need to bring around them. Another one is practicing cultural competency. So go ahead, jump in anytime.
No, I was going to say, tell me more about cultural competencies.
Yeah.
I love hearing how different coaches, different people have these theories on these different perspectives. And I think that's what allows us to educate, is by listening to these different ways of it being explained. Because sometimes it will click one way and other times it'll be like, oh, I now get it.
Yeah.
So tell me more about cultural competencies.
Well, the interesting thing, whenever you're dealing with different cultures, as you know from what you, even the example you gave at the beginning, we all have different things that we bring to the table. So the way decisions are made, the way people participate in discussions, the way we communicate with each other, our willingness to even speak up in a meeting, our willingness to disagree with the leader. So every culture brings something different to the table. So if a leader isn't aware of that, they could be misunderstanding. They could be building this picture of one of the team members that, oh, they are so rude, they're so whatever. And someone else maybe not saying anything and they're thinking, oh, they're just disengaged. They don't offer anything. So if a leader doesn't take time to understand the culture, and not for themselves to understand the culture, but to help the team understand each other's cultures. And when that happens, it's exactly what you say is the result. The discussions are richer. The perspectives that are shared are imaginably greater. The ability to collaborate, the ability to communicate is made greater whenever we take time to understand other cultures. And the strength of a team that is a diverse team, so actually wanting to have different cultures in your team, you are building a much stronger team than if everybody is the same from every culture, everything. But it doesn't happen by accident.
And I think cultural perspective is really important when you think about applying for a job. So I come from the engineering world, the oil and gas world. Like, there are a bunch of guys and it's a lot of construction workers, and you have to understand that that's the culture, right? Where I have also done work and supported organizations that are more feminine, more female, and are doing something more in the social service perspective, right? And so that culture is very different. And I think it's really important to understand that there are different cultures and they're all okay. But it's about being clear as a leader as to what is the culture in the environment that we are creating and that we are developing.
And I think when you tie that into the creating psychological safety, when you create that, then you are allowing people to say, I'm not comfortable with this, or this is different than the way our industry actually would approach things. So if that safety is there, then the different cultures are able to speak out without fear of any kind of repercussions.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I think it's really cool that you brought up psychological safety, because we actually have not talked about it at all in all of the different perspectives. So, as somebody who's looking to step up the next level in their leadership journey, and they're working in these remote hybrid spaces, how would you have them sit back and reflect and think about what is it that I need to do to be able to move up to that next ladder, that next step in and support these different philosophies that you've recommended?
I like the approach that you're taking in that it's the person themselves is examining their own leadership and saying, what do I need to do? And I think that right away is a huge thing. It's about self-leadership. So when you're in some kind of a leadership position, it's not somebody else's responsibility to develop you. It's your responsibility. So there are, of course, different things within your industry that you want to keep developing. But if your focus is just on that and you're forgetting those other parts that are the really people focused, because if you can't lead a team, it doesn't matter how good you are at doing your job. It's not going to be successful. So really taking these competencies and sitting down and asking yourself, how am I doing with this? Like one of the other competencies is high levels of emotional intelligence. And so when you take an emotional intelligence approach, the first one is self-awareness. How am I doing? Asking other people. When it comes to this, how am I making you feel we're in team discussions? Do you feel that we're working together? Do you feel like you're being developed? Do you feel supported? So asking other people for their opinion and to see yourself kind of in a 360 is really important. And then to say, okay, so here's one thing. So for 2 or 3 months, I am going to really focus on this. So if it's about developing cultural competence, it could be that you're reading about it. There are some amazing books to read that are about culture, specifically in business. So how do you educate yourself? Can you be part of groups in your community that you can learn about other cultures? Like, how will you put yourself in the position to learn and to really absorb and to become comfortable in cultural settings? So right now, you may not be in a diverse team, but I would say that eventually, most people are going to be working with people from diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds, everything, like the whole spectrum. So it's a lot about self-reflection. How am I doing? Where do I need to improve? And where do I get that help? Going to your leader, whoever is your leader right now, and saying, this is an area that I'd really like to develop. Can we talk about what that might look like as I am working, doing my job in among this team? So keeping your boss aware of, I am developing myself. I'm not asking you to do it. I'm taking responsibility, but I want to do it in unison with what is best for this organization as well. I want the organization to reach their goals. They're going to reach their goals if the team's reaching their goals, if the leader's reaching the goals. So working together to do that, but taking the responsibility and building those competencies, because competencies can be grown. They can be developed. Yeah. Emotional intelligence can be developed, can be grown. So it's not good enough to say, oh, I'm not good at that, so I'll think of something else. No, you have to be, and you can be.
So one of the things I say is that hard skills are easy to learn and soft skills are hard to learn because they take so much time for us to process, and we have to consciously think about how am I showing up? How am I behaving? How am I acting?
Yep.
As somebody who coaches people to become better leaders, how do you work with them to develop one of those soft skills competencies? Because it's not like, okay, I have a computer in front of me and I'm going to learn how to type, right? It requires you to put in effort.
Yeah.
And too often I see in a lot of training is we go take the training. We're like, oh, that was really good. We have all this energy.
Yeah.
And then we go back to work and just go into the habits of what we have.
Yeah.
And so as a coach, right, I think that's the advantage of having a coach. What is something that you do that helps them really get into learning those soft skills and developing them out?
Yeah, I think it starts with that assessment, like a self-assessment to figure out where am I now. One of the things that we're offering to your guests is access to do an assessment, and it's from the perspective of actually checking in to see how am I doing. Am I promotable? So the key thing, first of all, is identifying where are those weak areas, and also being aware of your strong areas, your strengths, because we want to celebrate those and we want to build in those as well. So I would do that with a client or with a coach or with somebody I'm coaching. So looking at the results and then having that conversation. How do you feel about this? What does this look like? How is this showing up in the work you're doing? Do you agree with it? Have you asked other people about it? Check in with your teammates. Check in with other people you're leading. Check in with the people who you're accountable to. And then start talking about it in context of who they are, where they're working, what the environment is like, but also looking at it in the context of their unique strengths. Because for me to work on coaching and facilitating growth will look different based on the strengths that I bring. So I'm very strong strategic thinking, and I've got relator skills. That would be totally different than a friend who is very strong maximizer, is very analytical. So helping a person understand that this is what you're bringing to the table. This is who you are. This is your greatness. Now let's take the greatness, the strengths that you have, and see how can we grow these competencies that may not be as strong as necessary whenever you're in this, when you're working in this hybrid environment.
I really love that approach. And I love that going and asking for that feedback and really kind of reflecting on where those are. Mm-hmm. Now, Roberta, I would love to chat with you for hours on this topic. Unfortunately, we're trying to keep this clean. And is there one idea or one suggestion that we haven't talked about that you really want to leave to resonate with the audience about developing their leadership in a hybrid role to help them get promoted?
I think one of the key things that people need to remember is being a leader of a hybrid team is hard. If you have challenges, you are among a great group of people. Leading fully remote or leading fully face-to-face, those are easy. Leading hybrid, it is more challenging, but it is also the most rewarding, and what you can pull to the table and the benefit to people is so great. So my advice is, if you're discouraged, know that there's a reason for it, but reach out for help. Because it is fun. It is really good, and it is such an empowering format for your team to actually work in. So you're not alone in your struggles.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think it's sometimes we need to know that, okay, there's not something wrong with me if I find this challenging.
Absolutely.
Right? It is.
I mean, these are leaders who have been leading in a totally different context, and you can't do the same thing that you've always done and just kind of flick a switch. Truly, you need to lead differently. And yes. So give yourself a lot of grace.
Awesome. Now, Roberta, I understand you've got a free offer for people that they can access. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what this is, it will provide the link, whatever way Nancy does that. And you can go, and so it's a set of 18 questions. And it is asking you, based on the competencies that we know are necessary for successful hybrid leadership. So asking you questions about that, just walking you through that. It doesn't take long at all. You will then get a report, and this report will give you a score, and it'll also help you to understand a little bit about what this means. What comes along then, there will be a link on that assessment on the report where you can set up a clarity call. And so in that, what we would do, we would just chat for 15 or 20 minutes about your results, and then start looking at, is this something that you want to go further? Do you want to work with us to develop your leadership, and specifically in the areas that we know will benefit you most?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Roberta. And anybody who is watching this show, I strongly encourage you, take advantage of these opportunities. Download this, complete the report, get the results, and learn about yourself. Because the first step to getting promoted is self-awareness.
Yeah.
And the sooner you get it, the sooner you have it. And then have that conversation with Roberta and decide where to go. Because your career is too important to be left up to imagination
Right.
or hope and want. By using these tools, by referring to all of these amazing speakers who have been offering really great opportunities to work with them, this is your opportunity for success. This is your opportunity to learn about yourself. Roberta, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the Get Promoted Fast series. I hope that we can do something like this again in the future.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you.